Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It's Erick Erickson here across the fruited plain. I'm delighted to have you with me. The phone number, 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, text Erick, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. Get the show notes, the live stream, the podcast, so much more. Republicans meeting down in Florida today for the House. They're trying to figure out how they're going to cut taxes. Donald Trump says he's considering the income tax going away, being replaced by tariffs. They don't have the votes in the House of Representatives to repeal the income tax amendment, so they can't really do it that way. But we got a lot to discuss. I want to begin, though, with the absolute hysteria. The left is not all right. Across media outlets, they're having a very, very hard time. They have 1,453 days to go before Donald Trump leaves the White House, and they're using all their energy in the first week. They can't keep up. None of us have ever seen a presidential administration like this. One of the arguments that supporters of Donald Trump made early on was that having been there before, this time he would knew how to put his foot on the accelerator on day one. And they were right. And he's moving so fast. Just for perspective, the Senate Democrats have scheduled a press conference today to talk about the January 6th pardons that happened 8 days ago. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has moved on to fixing the military and getting rid of DEI and trans soldiers, among other things, signing a series of executive orders, getting rid of members of the National Labor Relations Board, which is a very big deal constitutionally we'll get to. But first, I got to give you a sense of this. This is Adnan Gerhardis, or however you say his name, on MSNBC, just melting down over deportations.
Here's what I think the real tipping point is and will be. The thing that I would say Donald Trump deserves most praise for is that he intuited in 2016 and then again in 24 that there was an emotion out there among many, many people of feeling undefended, of feeling unseen and unheard by the system, of feeling defenseless against chaos and entropy. And that political emotion was underserved, was under-recognized by those of us in the media, was underserved by the Democratic Party, was underserved by his own different flavor of Republicans. And he was able to see that. People wanted to be advocated for. Now, I have every quibble with every actual thing he wanted to do to advocate for them, but he won for a reason. He won because he was able to see that. When you start having Gestapo raids in America, and we start becoming a country where, as in East Germany, a knock on the door is the thing people are thinking about instead of the brilliant idea they want to go create, then we are moving very, very far from the president worrying about what regular people need, right? He is distracting people with this flurry of activity, but none of these images you're seeing are going to make your life better.
Really? So getting rid of the drug dealers, the violent gang members, the rapists from Central and South American countries, that's not going to make our lives better. I assure you it will. The rush to this is Gestapo, this is Third Reich, this is East Germany is nonsense. Notice what he can't say, what they can't say on television, what they can't be honest about is who is he actually deporting. He's not deporting grandmothers. He's deporting criminals. He's deporting people who are already ordered to leave the country. He's not reporting the people they're trying to be sympathetic about, and that's why they can't say it. It's very notable when you listen to the people on television talking about this, complaining about this, they're not telling you honestly who Donald Trump is deporting. This is Eddie Glaude. All of this, so much of this, I should say, not all of it, but most of it from MSNBC. They're just losing their minds here.
Right. I mean, Tom Homan is engaged in cosplay. He wants to be Bull Connor for our current days. Is that right? And, there's a sense in which this moral question that has animated our politics looms large. And the question that I keep asking myself is, what is the Trump administration asking each of us to consent to? Right. So as we delve into this question, and there are those, like you said, it's the majority of the American people want to get rid of.
I got to tell you, what's on the Cryon on MSNBC as this clip is playing is schools try to reassure families amid deportation fears. That's literally what the screen says as this guy is talking on MSNBC.
Violent criminals who are here illegally. But what are we conceding? What are we consenting to when we say that they can do this to children? When we say that they can attack a 150-year precedent? What are we allowing? And so the question becomes, what are the implications for how we understand ourselves in relation to this moment? So it's not only a political question, it's a deeply, deeply moral question.
It's a deeply moral question that the public is on the right side of morality on, and these guys are on the wrong side. They don't want to acknowledge the class of people being deported. They're fine having the criminals in the country, and Donald Trump is not. This is, of course, Joy Reid.
If that sounds vaguely familiar, that's because it is. Similarities to what happened in Germany and what's happening now in America are just undeniable. History may not repeat verbatim, but it sure does rhyme. Trump and Stephen Miller, his former director of speechwriting, depict non-white immigrants as carriers of deadly diseases who are violent terrorists. Trump was returned to the presidency after staging a coup and has exerted control of media or social media in order to parrot anti-immigrant vitriol and openly hateful anti-LGBTQ language.
Says someone who would know, given her past. And by the way, what is happening with Joy Reid's face? She's looking like every day she's like slowly transforming into a llama. It's very, very weird. But nonetheless, did you hear that? He took power by coup. That's what she's claiming. Now let's move over to Scott Jennings, breathing breath of fresh air on MSN or on CNN.
If I may, if you came into the country illegally, you're a criminal. You broke our laws. You knew it when you did it.
The majority of immigrants, that is pretty much the only crime that they've committed is either entering or re-entering the country. And they've been, you've been living here for like 20, 30 years.
I understand.
Businesses, you built
I
homes,
understand.
you are part of the fabric of the country, you're part of the community. And that is not only that affects the immigrant family or the people that are getting their family members supported, that affects all of society. When kids start asking, why hasn't my best friend come back to school? Why is, why did my friend disappear? When businesses start to shutter, when foreclosures start happening.
No amount of berating me about this is going to change the fact that the American people literally just voted for this.
You're right.
They want the criminals out. They want the violent people out. And there's really not much of a controversy about it.
And so let's
finish the sentence, because your point right before you said that was you committed a crime because you came across the border.
Correct.
So the sentence that you want to say is they want the violent people out, and they want the criminals out, and they want everybody else out.
Correct.
So
Yes.
there you have it.
They want illegal immigration to end. They want it to end.
So
Wow, God bless Scott Jennings for putting up with, I mean, good Lord, it is like the tampon brigade. And I'm sorry if that offends you, but these are the cattiest dumb women on television are on that show on CNN. Just a bunch of vapid naggers. Good gracious. It's insufferable. And I'm sorry, I swore I would never play clips from that show again. But Scott Jennings, God bless him for pointing out Americans voted for this. Americans overwhelmingly support this. And one more from MSNBC again. This is Matthew Dowd, who worked for George Bush and then declared himself a Democrat who couldn't work with Republicans anymore because of George W. Bush.
Because experts knowing the law and all of that. I mean, to me, I think this says something more about us as a country, what's going on. I mean, I think he's going to be able to do this, and I don't think he's going to suffer any repercussions from the people that voted for him until something actually happens in their lives that changes their lives because of some action of his. I think that's the difficult spot we're in. I mean, I think Trump's going to continue to do these things. I think arguing about whether or not this has been done before, I think matters to people. I think saying that he violates norms, I don't think matters to people. I think we're in that space, that time and space, where the only protection I think the American public has is either one through the legal system, and I have my doubts about that as it finally gets to the Supreme Court, But two is, how do people protect themselves through any ramifications that these things can have? And I think that's the spot we're in. We're at a time in a country where a majority of the country, or at least a plurality of the country, Ari, doesn't seem to care right now that he violates norms and does these kind of things.
You're absolutely right. We don't care that he violates norms, and the reason is because you people broke the country. Your norms that he's breaking are just the things you put in place to protect your power when you're out of power. That's what Democrats do. They put in place standard operating procedures that they expect everyone else to adhere to. And most Republicans have come along in the past and they've gone along with it because they thought they were fairly reasonable. Trump say, nope, I'm smashing through your norms that protect you when you are out of power, because you are out of power, so you shouldn't get to dictate how government operates. And again, it is so notable. The most important thing is what you are not hearing on CNN, what you are not hearing on MSNBC, and that is who Donald Trump is deporting. Who are they? Well, they were complaining on CNN in that clip with Scott Jennings over having Dr. Phil tag along. You know who Dr. Phil tagged along and found? A child rapist from Thailand who they were deporting. They arrested this morning in New York City rapists. People wanted for theft, burglary, assault, manslaughter, drugs. These are violent people. These are violent people. They don't belong here. To Scott Jennings' point, they broke the law coming here. But Donald Trump isn't targeting the people who just came here illegally. He's targeting the people who were lawbreakers before they came here or are lawbreakers now. And you're not hearing that on CNN. You're not hearing that on MSNBC. And you got to start wondering, are the Democrats okay with the rapists and the murderers? Because the Democrats in Congress say all the time, we would support Donald Trump if that's who he was targeting. And yet they don't support him, and that's who he's targeting, so they must not really support him. They want to scream loudly about what Trump is doing without being honest about what he's doing. The crazy one to me, though, are the Nazi comparisons. Because what they're essentially doing is they're telling you, the American people, that you are Nazis. They are trying to tell you that you're the bad guy. This gets back to Bishop Budd, who lectured Donald Trump. I wrote about it over the weekend. If you subscribe to the email, I send it out to everybody. You can text data to 33777 and read it. Bishop Budd, which she said to Donald Trump about show mercy and compassion to the migrant, to the refugee, to the gay person, to the trans person. That's something Jesus would say. I don't dispute it. He would say also, repent. He would make them aware of their sins and call them to repent, which she never does. She wasn't drawing Donald Trump to Christ, and that's the problem with her speech. She wanted to use Jesus for convenience, not for conviction. He was just useful for her to sell left-wing pablum. And the reason the media praised Bishop Budd and is denouncing any Christian who challenged her speech is because what she did is what these people are doing on CNN and MSNBC. They are reflecting themselves to you. They are signaling to you that they are better than you. They're more virtuous than you. They are more gracious than you. They're more welcoming than you. They are superior to you. And in their moral relativism, in their collapse of civilized behavior, where they mask it among platitudes and wokeness to parade around the fact that they've lost their compassion for their neighbor, they no longer love their neighbor. What they're really doing here is they're masking that you are the problem, not the rapists, the drug dealers, the gangbangers, and the murderers who came into this country illegally. They hate you and they love them. That's a perversion of loving their neighbor. And you know, as Gertrude Himmelfarb once said, what they do is they define deviancy. so that deviancy is normal and normal is deviant. And we have this paraded across the American media right now, where the bad guys are now the good guys and the good guys are the bad guys. And you happen to be the good guys turned bad on MSNBC and CNN.
Have something to say? Call the show. 1-877-97-ERIC. That's 1-877-973-7425.
Greetings, welcome. It is Erick Erickson here across the nation. The phone number 877-973-7425. Y'all, I gotta just put in perspective the tortoise and the hare here, and remember in the story, the tortoise winds up winning. So perhaps there's a cautionary tale here. Except this is how fast Donald Trump is moving. We are 8 days into his presidential administration. And the Democrats in the Senate are only today holding a press conference about the January 6th pardons that Donald Trump did on January 20th, 8 days ago. That's how slow the Democrats are moving. Donald Trump is blazing ahead with executive orders. He's already been to North Carolina. He's been to California, multiple stops in California. He's been to Las Vegas, to the casino in Las Vegas. He's down in Florida with the House Republicans, barnstorming the nation, doing things. It's like everyone in Washington forgot what it was to have a competent president in the White House who can move and do things. And for all of the talk about Donald Trump's age from the left as a way to get him after Joe Biden dropped out, he's moving faster and doing more than Kamala Harris did, who is much younger than him. And the Democrats are only today dealing with something that happened 8 days ago. The press still can't grapple with Joe Biden's pardons. The whole thing is wild to see just how rapidly the man is moving. And the Democrats and the media don't know how to keep up. Now, Old Glory Bank can keep up with you and your banking if you need them. They would love to have you. OldGloryBank.com. You can get an account there, checking, savings. You can do mortgages. You can do car loans. If you're a business, they're not going to debank you. They are conservatives. They're by conservatives, for conservatives. But let me highlight something else, and I've done this. By the way, member FDIC, equal housing lender, all the stuff the lawyers make you want to say about their checking accounts and stuff. But Old Glory Bank also, they're bypassing Wall Street for their ownership. And so if you're interested in investing in Old Glory Bank, well, they would be happy to have you. If you go to own.oldglorybank.com, you can sign up there and you can invest in freely transferable stock from Old Glory Bank. I have done this. Not only do I believe in them, not only do I advertise for them, not only do I use them, but I've now invested in them. You can too. Own.oldglorybank.com. Now, look, owning stock has risks. Stock goes up and down. It's not FDIC insured. Terms and conditions apply, but if you're interested at all, go to own.oldglorybank.com. Greetings, welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. If you would like to be on the program, I would be delighted to have you. I guess being a professional means I should start the call screening program. Nonetheless, we got stuff we got to talk about. So those of you on the phones, be patient with me. You know, I just had a complete brain fart. Nope. I remember I gotta, so, you know, I do a little outline of this is what I want to talk about, this segment, this segment, this segment. And then there were like three things. I got hit up by a friend of mine in a text message. We're doing our Super Bowl planning, and now I'm totally distracted. No, I'm not going to Super Bowl. Just what am I cooking for Super Bowl? Friend of mine, it's his determination as to whether or not he's coming to my house for the Super Bowl based on what I'm cooking. I might do a brisket. Nonetheless, I digress. Okay. You know how Donald Trump has paused all the grants? There's a lot of outrage that Donald Trump has paused all of the grants to outside entities. He's paused grants to, for example, universities for research. He's paused the PEPFAR funding. The only funding that Donald Trump has not paused is funding for Israel and Egypt. They're drawing outrage from allies over pausing funding for the Philippines. Now, I will tell you, we should not pause funding for the Philippines because the Philippines are actually in a very cold war that's heating up with China. We're on the Philippine side. You know, they used to be a territory of ours. And the president of the Philippines at one point was making kissy face with China and realized he needs to be on our side, not their side. And every one of China's neighbors is on our side now. Even Vietnam is on our side. So there's a problem there, but it's only temporary review. But my suspicion is it may actually be related to something that no one paid attention to. This is a New York Times article from January 17th. That was what, the 19th? That was the Friday before the inauguration. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen told Congress on Friday that on January 21st, the Treasury Department will have to begin using extraordinary measures to prevent the United States from defaulting on its debt. The warning was likely one of Ms. Yellen's final acts as Treasury Secretary before the Trump administration assumes power at noon on Monday. The debt limit, which caps the amount of money that the United States is authorized to borrow to fund the government and meet its financial obligations, will now be the problem of the next Treasury Secretary, along with President-elect Donald J. Trump and the lawmakers who must decide his fate. Mr. Trump has tapped Scott Bessent, a billionaire hedge fund manager, to lead the Treasury Department. The job requires Senate confirmation. In her letter, Ms. Yellen sought to remind lawmakers that the debt limit simply allows the government to pay for spending that Congress has already approved. The debt limit does not authorize new spending, but it creates a risk that the federal government might not be able to finance its existing legal obligations that Congresses and presidents of both parties have made in the past. I respectfully urge Congress to act promptly to protect the full faith and credit of the United States. The debt limit was suspended in June 2023 after contentious negotiations. The suspension was scheduled to expire on January 2nd, forcing the Treasury Department to begin so-called extraordinary measures. However, because of a technical issue related to federal investments, Ms. Yellen said in December she expected extraordinary measures to be deployed between January 14th and 23rd. Those measures are essentially accounting maneuvers that can prevent the government from breaching the debt limit. As lawmakers negotiated last month over government spending, Mr. Trump complicated matters by making a last-minute push for Republicans to eliminate or lift the debt limit. Republicans have for years used it as leverage to force Democrats to cut spending. Now, Mr. Bessent was confirmed last night by a bipartisan majority in the Senate. He is now the Treasury Secretary. I have a sneaking suspicion that one of the reasons that the Trump administration suspended all external grants and appropriations is because of the debt limit, not just a review. They can use the debt limit as a cover for review, and they can use the review as cover to not have to deal with the debt limit. Why? Where are Republicans today? They're in Florida at Trump's golf course. The House Republicans are. The House Republicans are having their retreat at the Doral Golf Course down in Florida near Palm Beach. They've been meeting there. They met there yesterday. They met with Donald Trump yesterday. They're meeting with J.D. Vance today. They're trying to come up with a spending plan. They have to come up with a budget plan. They have to come up with a budget resolution. Here's the way the budget works. The budget committee, led by Jody Arrington, comes up with a budget saying how much Congress is going to spend. Once that's been approved by the House and the Senate, and it starts in the House always, then they do a reconciliation package, and that reconciliation package conforms current spending to the budget resolution. And they have to structure it in such a way that they can get a lot of Donald Trump's initiatives done, because the Senate Democrats will block everything else by filibuster. But there's a catch. It's called the Byrd Rule. The Byrd Rule is very arcane. It relies on the Senate parliamentarian to serve as a neutral arbiter for compliance. And the basic rule, there are 4 components to the Byrd Rule, but there's one you have to understand more than any other. And that is, whatever you're trying to get passed cannot be new public policy. So, for example, Democrats in this last reconciliation go-round when they were in charge, they tried to do several environmental statutes and restrictions on fossil fuels and other things that the Senate parliamentarian ruled were new policies. There's no precedent for them. They didn't alter current policy. They would have been new. And the Senate Democrats didn't do it. Now, what the Senate Democrats could have done is they could have voted to overrule the parliamentarian, which would have been like breaking the filibuster, and the Democrats declined to do so. John Thune has already said the Senate Republicans will not overrule the Senate parliamentarian if the Senate parliamentarian makes a decision on reconciliation. So Republicans are meeting behind closed doors in Florida without Chip Roy. My friend Chip Roy, congressman from Texas, announced it's a waste of time. He's not going. They're not going to agree on anything. What I'm told behind the scenes, not from Chip Roy, but from other members of Congress, is that the Republicans in the House have agreed to cut $7 trillion in spending, but they can only agree on $8 billion, not 80 billion, but eight, single digit number 8 billion with a B. So they got to cut 7 trillion with a T. They can only agree on 8 billion with a B. They have a very long way to go. Meanwhile, we're hitting the debt ceiling. So I don't think it's a coincidence that Trump has paused all the funding. I don't think it's a coincidence he's paused all the grants. It's going to be interesting to see what Scott Bissett is able to come up with, what maneuvers he can do. He's an interesting guy, sharp man. But he's going to have to deal with this sort of stuff. Now, to that end, of course, Donald Trump is a populist, not a conservative, and Donald Trump is willing to spend. But I want to review this with you again, because it's very important you understand this. The larger the government section of the spending and GDP grows, the smaller the private sector gets. Let me just listen. I'm not a mathematician and I'm not an economist, but I can explain this one to you very easily. When you buy into, I realize there are bonds for private companies that's the acquisition for their debt, but I'm going to make this very simple for you. When you invest in the private sector, what do you invest in? Stocks. When you invest in the public sector, what do? You invest in bonds, treasuries, government bonds. So the government spends the tax revenue that comes in. When the government runs out of tax revenue to spend, the government creates bonds, treasury bills, and they sell them to people. And the debt, the national debt, is how much the government owes in those treasury bills, on those bonds. So we're at $35 trillion. The government owes people $35 trillion. That includes interest. So you've got $10,000. You can buy $10,000 in stock, or you can buy $10,000 in bonds, government bonds. If you buy the $10,000 in stock, that $10,000 goes to a company. That company can invest in hardware. That company can invest in software. That company can invest in people. That company can invest in buildings. That company can invest in assembly lines. That company can invest in all sorts of things with that $10,000. If that $10,000 goes to government bonds, you're just adding more debt to the government. Now, here's the thing. The government bond is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States. Stock goes up, stock goes down, the company may go bankrupt. The government's not going to go bankrupt. The government's just going to raise taxes ultimately. So if the government's paying you guaranteed 4.5%, 5% interest, the company's not paying a dividend, it's a risky bet, it's a small business, it's what, you may very well spend the money on the government bond. You're going to get 4 to 5% interest guaranteed over time. So what happens? Everybody starts giving their money to the government. And the private sector gets stagnant. Businesses can't grow. Businesses don't have money to invest. Businesses don't have money to hire. Businesses don't have money for strategic planning. Businesses don't have money to create. The government's getting all the money. The more the government grows, the shakier the private sector gets. You increase the government bond rate. You're increasing the amount of interest that has to be paid. You're increasing the amount of mandatory spending from the government. You're decreasing the amount of money in the federal budget for education, for defense, for healthcare, for everything else. And Republicans in Florida behind closed doors are going to have to come to terms with that. We have hit the debt ceiling. They're going to have to issue more bonds. They're going to have to grow the government. They're going to have to grow the debt. But when you grow the debt, you shrink the private sector. If the private sector keeps shrinking, there's less and less money available for tax revenue, which means the government has to take on more debt, and it becomes a debt spiral. The private sector keeps shrinking, the government keeps growing, reducing tax revenue available from the private sector, increasing government debt to fund everything, and at some point, you go off the cliff, and the government has to cut everything out of the budget. No defense spending, no education spending, no healthcare spending, nothing. All they can do is fund the debt. And then they raise taxes. And by then our economy is wrecked and broken. We become Japan of the 1980s, economically stagnant. They still haven't fully recovered. And China eats our lunch. Republicans are meeting behind closed doors in Florida. We've hit the debt ceiling. The pause on grants and spending is a ruse. They both get to check the grants and spending, but also get to avoid immediate hitting the debt ceiling, immediately having to raise the debt ceiling. We've got a fiscal crisis at our doorstep. And Republicans in Congress don't seem to know what to do. And by the way, the president wants to raise tariffs and cut the income tax. The problem here is that it's very easy to see what our national trade is. And by looking at our national trade, we can extrapolate what the tariffs would bring in. And tariffs might bring in $2 trillion. The income tax brings in $5 to $6 trillion. We can't adjust tariffs enough without wrecking the economy and causing inflation to match what the income tax brings in, which means either we can't do tariffs and get rid of the income tax, or we got to do a combination of both, or we have to add to the national debt some more, which shrinks the private sector some more, which pushes us further to fiscal havoc. There are no easy answers now. And the problem is for all of you who think, well, we should do this anyway and force Congress to make the real cuts. There's a constituency for every cut you would have to make. And ultimately, you wouldn't be confronting Congress. You'd be confronting the American people. And that's the problem. There is no easy way out of this right now. But there is an easy way for you to support common sense conservative reforms to all of it, and that's to support Americans for Prosperity. Right now, they got a website up, protectprosperity.com, where they are pledging to put real money behind a campaign to advance President Trump's tax cuts. They want to make it happen. with Common Sense Conservative Solutions. They'd love to have you on board. All you have to do is go to protectprosperity.com. You can, from there, sign up with AFP and get involved in the process yourself and lend your voice to Common Sense Conservative Solutions, including low taxes. The tax cuts expire at the end of this year. If Congress doesn't renew those tax cuts, we're going to have a world of economic hurt next year as taxes go up. So there's a real push on to preserve the current tax rates, if not improve them. And you can be a part of it. All you have to do, go to americansforprosperity.org, or better yet, go to protectprosperity.com, sign up with AFP today, get involved in the process, and keep sane, common sense, conservative sense solutions flowing from Washington.
Those who love him, listen to find out what he's going to say next. Those who disagree with him, also listen to see what he's going to say next. It's the Erick Erickson Show.
Hello there. Welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, stand by though. This is a short segment, so I'll get to those of you on the phones when we come back. Y'all, I gotta say this is a terrible look. Those of you up in North Carolina, Tom Tillis, remember the story a week ago? Someone told Pete Hegseth's former sister-in-law, Danielle Hegseth, that if she signed a statement testifying that she believed her former brother-in-law, Pete Hegseth, had an alcohol abuse problem and was abusive to his second wife, that would persuade members of the Senate to reject Pete Hegseth. Well, the Wall Street Journal reports it was Tom Tillis that said this. It was Tom Tillis who said it. Now, I want to put this in perspective for you. Tom Tillis, Republican senator from North Carolina, according to the Wall Street Journal, told Danielle Hegseth, the former sister-in-law of Pete Hegseth, that if she signed a statement and made it public that Pete Hegseth had abused his ex-wife, that it would be persuasive enough to kill Hegseth's nomination. And in fact, it did convince Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski to vote against Hegseth, in addition to Mitch McConnell. But Tillis was the 50th senator to vote to support Hegseth. Tillis said that because Hegseth made it out of committee, he would keep his word to vote for the nominee. So he tried to kill it, but he didn't want his fingerprints on it. That's what it was. Someone the other day said that every senator looks in the mirror and thinks they're the next John McCain, and really they're the next Tom Tillis. He tried to be a maverick and got bullied into falling in line, is what it appears from this. By the way, he's not disputing the Wall Street Journal reporting that he's the one who told Danielle Hegseth this. And had Tom Tillis voted against Pete Hegseth, Hegseth would have been denied confirmation. But having done all of this, he then voted for Hegseth. Made the sister-in-law look bad, got her out there in public, caused family turmoil, and then got weak and wobbly and voted for Hegseth. I'm glad Hegseth got confirmed, but this does not make Tom Tillis look good at all. This hour of the program brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. Reach out to them if your business is growing. FirstLibertyGA.com. See if they can help you. FirstLibertyGA.com. When we come back, got to give you a little bit of a legal lesson in a very old Supreme Court case that's about to matter greatly. Hello, America. Welcome. Yes, I have heard from some of the offended people by prior remarks. If they only knew. I am about to try not to bore you. It's this great sin of radio is you don't want to bore people. You want to keep people entertained, but also I want to make you more informed. I want you to be smarter than the average bear. And the case is a Supreme Court case that I got to explain to you from 1935, and it's very important. And let me explain the situation to you. Donald Trump today has fired both the acting chairwoman of the National Labor Relations Board, Gwen Wilcox, and the general counsel Jennifer Abruzzo, who needed to be fired on day one. It took him a week to get there. She was fired via email. Gwen Wilcox was one of the Labor Relations Board 2 Democratic members. She was ousted. And of course, she released her statement. As the first Black woman board member, I brought a unique perspective that I believe will be lost upon my unprecedented and illegal removal. Got to throw she was a Black woman. It's got to be racist. Of course, no, she's super progressive. Jennifer Abruzzo is the most egregious one, and I'm glad she was fired. Since day one, people have been urging her to fire. Let me explain to you just how whacked out left these ladies are. Jennifer Abruzzo in particular supported a rule that employers were still responsible for employees even if they didn't directly work for the employer. Now, how does that work, you ask? Here's the example. McDonald's, according to the rule Jennifer Abruzzo wanted, Jennifer Abruzzo says that if you are a employee of a franchise, a McDonald's franchise, in let's say Macon, Georgia, that McDonald's, the corporation, is responsible for the actions of the employee of the franchise. Or Uber drivers. Uber drivers are independent contractors. And according to Jennifer Abruzzo, Uber should be responsible for the actions of the Uber driver, even though they're not an employee of Uber. They don't get workers' comp. They don't get a salary. They don't get any of these things. Doesn't matter. Because people connect them and think that they might be an Uber employee. Uber must be responsible for them, even though that's not the way the law works. Now, what this would do, some of you are not going to say this isn't a bad idea, except you would kill franchises. You would kill franchises. It's crazy to me that people think this is a good idea. It would absolutely destroy small businesses. And that's part of the issue here. You do need to understand that Democrats don't say it publicly. I don't even know if many of them have internalized it, but they actually hate small business. And it's very communist. You know, the bourgeois were the bad guys in communism. The bourgeois were the middle-class shop owners. It wasn't the CEOs of the big businesses. The CEOs of the big businesses can be controlled. It's the small shop owner. He's the enemy because small businesses control most of the capital in this country collectively. They're the ones who have to be punished. And Democrats don't like it when you can work for a small business because it's harder to control you by you working for a small business. Now, this gets us to Humphrey's Executor. Everyone who ever goes to law school has to study Humphrey's Executor. It's been a minute since I had to refresh myself, but let me give you the case. The greatest president in American history is a man named Calvin Coolidge. Calvin Coolidge appointed William Humphrey as a member of the Federal Trade Commission in 1925 and was reappointed in 1931. Franklin Roosevelt took office in 1933 and decided that William Humphrey was not a fan of the New Deal. And so Roosevelt asked Humphrey to resign from the Federal Trade Commission, and Humphrey said no. So Roosevelt fired him. Humphrey showed up for work every day, even after he was fired. The Federal Trade Commission Act permitted the president to dismiss an FTC member only for inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office. And Roosevelt fired him for political differences related to the New Deal. So the case wound its way through the courts, and in the process, William Humphrey died. That's why the case is called Humphrey's Executor. They continued the lawsuit after death, in large part because his estate wanted the rest of his paycheck. And the court set up this idea in Humphrey's Executor that there are executive branch offices that serve at the pleasure of the United States president. There are quasi-legislative and there are quasi-judicial offices. And the court held that the quasi-legislative and quasi-judicial officers of the nation can only be fired with statutory conditions enacted by Congress. Those who work directly in the executive branch, serve at the pleasure of the president, can be fired for any reason. But the court decided that the Federal Trade Commission was a quasi-legislative body because it adjudicated cases and it promulgated rules. And since the president can't fire a member of the legislative or the judicial branch, well, he can't do that either except for cause. Now, here's the thing you have to understand. The very specific situation with the Federal Trade Commission was that it was a very, very technical board at the time. The Federal Trade Commission in 1935 was a board put together of independent experts to help the nation deal with trade issues as it was becoming a global power. It handled consumer protection. It handled antitrust. It was set up in 1914 by Congress to enforce the Clayton Act. It's got 5 members nominated by the president, subject to Senate confirmation. They served for 7 years. One member is as the chairman, one of those 5. The 3 of the members serve at the pleasure of the current president in the majority. So if the present president is a Republican, the board is 3-2 Republican. If the president is Democrat, the board is 3-2 Democrat. The board, though, even though it was set up that way, was supposed to be nonpartisan technical experts. Over time, the Federal Trade Commission has been shaped to enforce the president's agenda. So when the president takes over and the president is Democrat, like Joe Biden, he put Lena Khan in. And the FTC became very, very aggressively anti-big business, reflecting the will of the president of the United States. And in fact, the FTC board coordinated with members of the Biden administration on where to bring lawsuits and how to bring lawsuits and things like that. So they weren't a quasi-independent commission. They were collaborating with the executive branch. They weren't just promulgating rules. So this is the problem here. Humphrey's executor in 1935 said that the president cannot fire members of boards of quasi-independent agencies except for cause. Now, fast forward to Sela Law versus Consumer Financial Protection Board. That's a case from just 5 years ago now, 2020. Chief Justice Roberts examined that case over actions Donald Trump took related to people on the Consumer Financial Protections Board. And he narrowly construed Humphrey's executor and essentially said that the president's removal power may be constrained by Congress if the agency in question shared the same characteristics of the FTC in 1935. So the Consumer Financial Protection Board was set up to be a quasi-independent agency. And the Supreme Court said that in a 5-4 decision that there's a new test to limit the power of the president. The court recognized the president can remove officers at will, but there were 2 exceptions. The president's removal power can be constrained by Congress if the officer in question is a member of an agency that was set up like the FTC in 1935. Second, Congress can constrain the president's removal power for inferior offices with limited duties and no policy making. And what was the ultimate outcome there? The court, with Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh ruled 5-4 that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau structure with a sole director only terminated for cause was unconstitutional because it violated the separation of powers. Specifically said that the president has the power to remove principal executive officers unless the board is set up exactly like the FTC in 1935 that exercised no part of the executive power. Guess what? Now, I know you're a little bit confused here because it's confusing law. But here's the problem. So let's review what happened today. Donald Trump has fired a Democrat from the National Labor Relations Board. The law says Donald Trump can only fire a board member of the National Labor Relations Board for that person not showing up for work or having broken the law. The Supreme Court says that the president can hire and fire at will within the executive branch. And the only people he can't hire and fire at will are those in quasi-independent agencies that are set up exactly like the Federal Trade Commission was set up in 1935. Problem is, today, in the year of our Lord 2025, there's not a single quasi-independent agency in government set up like the FTC in 1935. See, the FTC in 1935 merely did specific duties as a legislative and judicial officer overseeing claims based on existing federal law from Congress related to trade. They didn't do anything else. And now even the FTC is a highly partisan organization that changes its mission every 4 years based on who's president. And that right there, the change in mission every 4 years, is a sign of partisanship. And that means the National Labor Relations Board, every election season, can change its direction. Is it pro-business or is it pro-union? Which means it's not operating like the FTC in 1935. So if Gwen Wilcox, who was fired today, the Democratic member, decides to file suit, she is going to get John Roberts to kill Humphrey's executor once and for all. Because John Roberts has literally written that Humphrey's executor is no longer good law. Neil Gorsuch wrote an entire book with a chapter devoted to Humphrey's executor being no good anymore. So Donald Trump today is daring Democrats to sue him for firing Democrats from the National Labor Relations Board. He's daring them to do it. Now, what's all of this going to do? What's the logical outcome here? What's the necessary outcome? Congress has to do its job. Congress, by not doing its job, has allowed the executive to grow. And because the executive is explicitly partisan, these independent agencies have become partisan. Congress can rein all these agencies in. It can. Congress has the power to rein them back in so that they only serve a legislative function, which is to write rules based on very clearly worded congressional statutes. All of these institutions are about to be blown up. It's kind of wild. So let's go back to the CFPB case where Roberts essentially says, no, none of these agencies are set up like the FTC in 1935. He wrote that the structure with single point of leadership that could only be removed for cause had no foothold in history and had only been found in 4 instances. The U.S. Office of Special Counsel, the Social Security Administration, Federal Housing Finance Agency, and temporarily during the Civil War, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. Roberts said that the 3 current uses are modern and contested, and they do not involve regulatory enforcement authority comparable to the CFPB. Essentially, the bottom line here, for those of you who are confused by all of this, let me just bring it home and land the plane here. The Supreme Court has been begging someone to bring them a case where they could kill the Humphreys executor case. Because this Supreme Court believes the president is in charge of the executive branch. And all of these little agencies that Congress has set up, pretending that they're not in the executive branch, actually are in the executive branch. And therefore, the president of the United States can hire them and fire them at will. And the Democrats are about to hand the Supreme Court exactly what they want. The perfect case to kill Humphrey's executor and expand the power of the presidency unless Congress acts.
When the truth seems hazy, Erick will clear the way. It's the Erick Erickson Show.
The phone number, 877-973-7425, if you want to be on the program. Now, this is very important in my mind to reiterate one of the things going on here. You have to understand that what is happening right now with the Democrats and the left is that their strategy is to convey to undecided voters that they are better than you. They are more moral than you. They are more virtuous than you. They are more honest than you. They are more capable than you. Now, never mind that the voters rejected them on all those scores, particularly capability. People just simply stopped trusting Democrats' abilities to handle anything in the country. New York Magazine, their cover is on a party held for Republicans celebrating Donald Trump. And it's essentially an attack on the cruel kids table. And they want to make the case that it is a very white party. But there's a problem. If you pay very close attention to the periphery of the picture, you will see a whole lot of black people who are cropped out. You might see a hand or a leg, but they wanted to make it lily white, so they had to crop the picture just so to be able to try to convey what they wanted. But the bottom line is all of it is to portray every supporter of Donald Trump as racist and bigoted and hateful, and they could get away with that when Trump lost the popular vote in 2016, but not now. He won the popular vote. It's going to be hard for them to do. Now, I got to tell you about the Eden Pure and the Gen 40 heater, because I got it on my office. It's cold again today, and you can't hear it, can you? Listen. You hear nothing. Why? Because it's super quiet. It's even, I've got it turning left and right and tilting up and down, spraying hot air across the room to keep me warm in this office. And it's a large size studio, and it works. Lowers your heating bill, warms up efficiently, uses infrared and uses convection to spread warm air. It works fantastically. There's even a little remote control that you can control it with from a distance. You can get $50 off. It's already on sale. You get $50 off by going to EdenPureDeals.com and put in Erick50 as your discount code. Erick, E-R-I-C-K, the number 5, number 0, Erick50 at EdenPureDeals.com. You'll get $50 off, already great sale price, of the Eden Pure Gen 40 heater. Get it today at EdenPureDeals.com. Discount code Erick50. Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. Senator Gary Peters, Democratic Senator from Michigan, is retiring. He is going to create an open seat for the Democrats in a state that is very swingy, back and forth. Mayor Pete, the former Secretary of Transportation, says that he wants to run for it. Now, you're thinking, wait a second, but Mayor Pete was from South Bend, Indiana. Yes, but you see, Mayor Pete is deeply politically ambitious. I mean, this is a guy who is arrogant enough to think he could go from being mayor of a small city in Indiana to president of the United States, and got stuck as Secretary of Transportation, and only because he was a gay dude with a military background, so he checked boxes for Joe Biden for diversity. Otherwise, he wouldn't have even been that. I mean, transportation in this country worked better when he was on paternity leave. But Mayor Pete is deeply ambitious, wants to be in politics, wants to be a player, and so he moved to Michigan thinking he could run for governor of Michigan. Well, now he's suddenly thinking he'll run for the Senate. Now, keep in mind, Mayor Pete moved to Michigan, moved his family to Michigan, and went out into Michigan, set up a super PAC to influence Michigan elections, to earn himself some goodwill, and at one point revealed he had no idea Michigan had an upper peninsula. I'm not making that up. And at another time, someone asked him who the Detroit Lions were playing that weekend. It was football season. Now, I'm sorry, but if you're running for any statewide office in the state of Michigan, and you don't know anything about the Detroit Lions, I may not, but I don't live in Michigan. But I know if you're a politician in Michigan, you got to root for the Lions, and you need to know about them. And Mayor Pete was absolutely clueless. Absolutely clueless. Listen, white progressive Democrats love Mayor Pete because, again, he's gay and has a military background and married and kids. He checks every diversity box for the Democrats. But that doesn't relate to voters. But good luck to them for having him run. Now, one of the issues that's going to be in play in 2026 is what I want to talk to you about right now. Republicans, I need you to remember something I kept telling Democrats in 2024, and they didn't want to listen. And I'm glad, because I'm glad they lost. But I was telling them the whole time, I wasn't lying to them. And I'm not lying to you when I tell you it's the economy, stupid. There are lots of conversations. I saw a guy I follow online, young guy, the other day who said, stop listening to people who tell you what happens online isn't the real world. Nobody needs to touch grass. What's happening here is real. And I think it is very dangerous if you start believing that, because the Democrats did. The Democrats got whipped up about trans issues because that's what they were seeing on TikTok. The Democrats got whipped up about illegal immigration because that's what they were seeing on Twitter. The Democrats believed everything on Twitter. And they missed the point that it was always about the economy. It's always about the economy. Had an exchange with some friends just yesterday about this. And they're like, honestly, it's the cultural currents that did it. I'm willing to be wrong on this, but I really don't think I am. I think when you boil everything down at the end of the day, feeling safe and feeling capable are always the two big issues, and they play out in two ways: crime and the economy. When crime's out of control and the economy's out of control, whichever party's in power is going to get blamed. And the economy is more important than crime, because if the economy is good, crime tends to go down anyway. It's the economy, stupid. And Democrats convinced themselves from what they were seeing online and in their echo chambers at MSNBC, CNN, the New York Times, and the like, that the economy is actually good. At the macro level, yes, it was. At the micro level, no, it wasn't. If Republicans really believe that voters voted for them because of DEI, and voters voted for them because of trans issues, and voters voted for them because of boys and girls sports, I'm not saying they didn't vote for them that way, but that wasn't the motivating factor. The motivating factor was the economy, stupid. It's their 401k. It's their making ends meet. Now, you and I know this, but if you are a hyper online right-wing activist for Donald Trump, you're probably missing the boat because you care about DEI more than anything. You care about trans issues more than anything. You care about owning the left more than anything. Mom and dad out there with kids, they don't care about owning the left. They care about owning a car that can get them back and forth to work with gas that isn't outrageously expensive and to buy groceries. They don't care about it. And I suspect Democrats can't find a message right now. They're struggling to find a message. Donald Trump is moving fast and furious. He's moving so fast, makes you wonder where Vin Diesel is. And they can't keep up with him. But I think their egg attack gives you a hint of where they're going to land. So, egg prices, very expensive right now. In fact, when was it? 2 weekends ago, for MLK weekend, my brother-in-law and sister came to visit, and I had a couple recipes I wanted to make, and I needed, between the two different recipes, I needed 15 eggs. One was a bread pudding, one was a sausage and egg bake for breakfast. I needed a lot of eggs. My local Publix was completely out of eggs except for quail eggs. And I wasn't going to use quail eggs because they were smaller than what I needed. I had to go to 2 different grocery stores to find eggs. Eggs were sold out. Not only were they sold out, they were expensive. I found eggs. I got the last 2 cartons of eggs. I went to the Kroger first thinking, surely the Kroger's going to have eggs. Nope. Had to go to Fresh Market, the poor man's version of Whole Foods. And they had eggs. Unfortunately, they had Vital Farms eggs. That's all they had. I'm not a fan of Vital Farms. I've read too much about them to be a fan of Vital Farms. Some of it people get worked up about, but I think the bottom line is Vital Farms, from what I have read, maybe it's not true, but they have never denied it. Vital Farms, they put certain food in the chicken meal to make the eggs a brighter yellow. Like if you have chickens in your backyard, the egg yolks are very, very, very bright orange. They're not the pale yellow like standard commercial eggs. And I have heard that Vital Farms essentially feeds the chicken stuff so the egg yolks look oranger than they otherwise would be, that it's not actually what they're eating. It's like they're eating like, you eat a bunch of blueberries, your poop is blue. Same thing, you eat a bunch of marigold or something, your eggs are going to be marigold colors. I'm like, it seems like a scam to me, overpriced eggs. But nonetheless, I had to buy them. They were the last, and I got the last 2. The reason that egg prices are so high and they are so hard to find right now is because of the bird flu. Millions of birds are getting the bird flu. Chickens are getting the bird flu. And here's the thing. If your chicken, batch of chickens gets bird flu, you have to kill all the chickens before it spreads. So chicken farmers, when one bird gets bird flu, they're killing the whole flock because otherwise it's going to spread. So they're killing them and they're burning the carcasses. And it's sweeping the country. I read yesterday there's a duck farm in the upper Midwest somewhere, ducks. They farm ducks, and they've had to cull all the ducks because a couple of the ducks came down with bird flu, so they killed all the ducks. What's happening is it's causing an egg shortage. It's causing a spike in prices of eggs. The higher the price goes for eggs, the less people buy them, and it sorts itself out with supply and demand. So the Democrats have now seized on the eggs, and they're like, Donald Trump, why aren't you doing anything about the eggs? Donald Trump, this is your fault. Donald Trump, never mind the man's only been there for 8 days now. 8 days, and they're like, the eggs. Now, the bird flu and the egg prices, the egg scarcity was happening a week and a half ago when Joe Biden was president. The Democrats didn't care. Everything was fine a week and a half ago, according to Democrats. Now everything's bad. This is a standard talking point now. Donald Trump's been there for 8 days. Why haven't food prices come down? Donald Trump's done 2 bajillion executive orders. None of those executive orders have brought down prices. Why? Why, Donald Trump? Well, you got to have Congress to act. Maybe we need interest rates to go back up from the Fed. But this is the point. It's the economy, stupid. And Republicans need to understand that you own it now. You have a grace period from voters. That grace is going to wear out. They're going to get tired of you. One of Donald Trump's plans is tariffs. In fact, he's announced he wants to replace the income tax with a tariff. That would be disastrous. Here's why. Tariffs cause prices to go up, which is inflationary. People already have high prices. So you're thinking, well, it'll be offset by no income tax. Except here's the problem. You can find what our annual trade is. What is our annual trade? In fact, let's see. How much does the U.S. export or import each year? Import each year. The United States imports $3.8 trillion in goods and services. Okay, 3.8. This is from 2023. The United States imported $3.8 trillion in goods and services, the highest figure in 20 years. Okay, if that's the case, and you do a 10% tariff, you're going to raise $300 billion. Wait, nope. I'm sorry. Annual imports that it's 348 billion, not 3 trillion. It's 348 billion. This is the updated number from the census. So there you go. We import $351.6 billion according to the Census Department. So, okay, you add 100% tariff. So everything goes up by 100%. What are you getting? $351.6 billion. You know how much the income tax brings in every year? $5 trillion. $5 trillion. And we still spend more than that. So if Donald Trump imposes a 100% tariff, we're only going to get $351.6 billion. And our federal budget is $6 to $7 trillion. From 351 billion to 6 trillion. Where are we going to make up the money? Where are we going to make up the money? Are we going to do 1,000% tariff? Where are we going to make up the money? This is the problem. Tariffs will cause inflation. Inflation will cause less spending. Now, you could do a combination. I think what Donald Trump is getting at is he wants to try to do a VAT or something like that, but you can't. You're not going to repeal the income tax amendment. You don't have 2/3 of both houses in the Congress and 3/4 of the states to do it. So if you impose a VAT for the first time in American history, you're still going to have the income tax for Democrats to raise later. You're going to have to come up with something. Tariffs can hurt the economy. What I actually think tariffs do is you get a sugar high out of it for about 2 years. You get increased revenue, but you don't get decreased economic output. And then the economic output starts going down, which puts J.D. Vance up to lose in 2028 as there's an economic decline from the tariffs. Republicans got to get serious about the economy. And a lot of it is they got to cut spending. Here's the thing. This is it. Republicans, just please, for the love of God, listen to me. Republicans, I'm begging you, just listen to me right now. Make your number one goal in Congress stimulating the private sector economy, and that means you're going to have to cut government spending. Every dollar you cut from the government spending is a dollar that gets redirected into the private sector economy and grows the private sector GDP. If you will focus on reducing the size and scope of government and deregulating, you're going to spur economic growth that gives you wiggle room to cut taxes. And the American public will see you're making good on your promises to fix the economy. The Democrats are going to be non-relenting in blaming you for any economic news whatsoever. Never mind, they tried to escape blame for the last 4 years. You've got to focus on the economy. It is the economy, stupid. And if you focus on the economy and you fix the economy, the American public will literally give you license to do everything you want on DEI and woke stuff and trans stuff and everything else. But it's always the economy, stupid. Focus there first. Now, I want you to focus on erickforhillsdale.com. If you go to erickforhillsdale.com today, you can sign up and start taking classes at Hillsdale College for free. They have 40 different courses you can choose from. They're each different length. They're all about 30-minute video lectures. You do it at your own pace, and you just learn. Learn about the Constitution. Learn about the value of citizenship. Learn about Genesis, the first book of the Bible. Learn about C.S. Lewis. Learn about basic economics. They're conducted by professors at Hillsdale College. And each lecture, it varies. Some of them 12 episodes, some of them are 6. They're all about 30 minutes long. You just do it at your own pace. And you learn, and you benefit, and you build a relationship with Hillsdale College, and they're wonderful people. All you have to do is go to Erick, E-R-I-C-K, erickforhillsdale.com. Sign up today at Hillsdale College. Take these for free. Improve your mind, get smarter than the average bear, and also build a relationship with Hillsdale College.
You're at the intersection of politics, news, culture, and current events. It's the Erick Erickson Show.
Hello, it is Erick Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. Remember the social panic about the drones in New Jersey? And I pointed out to you, and it was actually my friend Ben Domenech at The Spectator who highlighted it first, that back in 2023, there was a press release from a research group that was building drones and said those drones would be test flown from New Jersey to Dover, Delaware at an Air Force base via Pennsylvania starting in late 2024. Everyone's like, oh, it can't be that. It's got to be the Chinese. It's got to be the Iranians. And then the FAA said everybody stop flying drones, and they stopped. And I was like, wait a second. There's no way these are the Chinese or the Iranians. Why would they comply with the FAA? And people were like, nah, it's the UFOs. Donald Trump has ordered the government to reveal what the drones were all about in New Jersey. Told Susie Wiles to get on it and figure it out. They have just released what the drones were. Back in 2023, a research facility in New Jersey announced it would begin test flying drones between New Jersey to the Air Force Base in Dover, Delaware via Pennsylvania. And that's what the drones were. I told you so. You didn't have to go to UFOs and little green men and demons and angels and the Chinese and the Iranians. The FBI and the FAA say of the thousands of complaints related to drones, they can explain all of them except for less than 100. And in each of those instances, they believe that they were private people flying their drones for giggles to try to scare neighbors. That the drones that were identified in those scenarios that are unexplained were small drones that didn't fit the descriptions of the ones causing all the disruption. And by the way, about 1,000 of the reports of drones were commercial jet traffic. There you have it. We have the answer. But you know, they knew this when Biden was president and for some reason did not want to tell anyone. I have no idea. What was the Biden administration doing the whole time? Just bizarre. We'll be right back.
People in this country.
How's your day going? Oh. You got more class? No. No. All right. You're allowed to do either. Hello, America. Welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, would love to have you call, We've got some calls here, and we'll get to those in just a moment. But I want to talk to you for just a couple of minutes about something first. It kind of blew my mind to learn this. The state of Oregon is one of many states now that have hotlines where you can call and report hate or bias. I'm looking at this website right now from the Oregon Department of Justice. The Bias Response Hotline is here to help you understand your options, make choices about your next steps, and receive support in the aftermath of experiencing or witnessing bias. If you call the Bias Response Hotline, you are connecting with trauma-informed hotline advocates who are trained in crisis intervention and can provide bias response advocacy, including assisting in reporting a bias crime to law enforcement. You will not be surprised to learn that one of the common complaints to the Oregon Bias Hotline these days is people flying Israeli flags. The anti-Semites are triggered. This compulsion to turn to neighbors. This is the thing. Let me go back to this audio from earlier. From what's his name? Anand Gerdhardis on MSNBC. Just listen to this one more time.
Here's what I think the real tipping point is and will be. The thing that I would say Donald Trump deserves most praise for is that he intuited in 2016 and then again in 24 that there was an emotion out there among many, many people of feeling undefended, of feeling unseen and unheard by the system, of feeling defenseless against chaos and entropy. And that political emotion was underserved, was under-recognized by those of us in the media, was underserved by the Democratic Party, was underserved by his own different flavor of Republicans, and he was able to see that. People wanted to be advocated for. Now, I have every quibble with every actual thing he wanted to do to advocate for them, but he won for a reason. He won because he was able to see that. When you start having Gestapo raids in America, and we start becoming a country where, as in East Germany, a knock on the door is the thing people are thinking about.
We can stop it right there. There's a very famous movie. I would encourage you to see it. It is German, from 2006, called The Lives of Others. As much as we criticized and condemned the Soviets because the Soviets were bad, the East German communists took it to the next level. I mean, they were the worst. They were the love child of the Nazis and the commies. East Germany was a massive police state. And neighbor spied on neighbor. Children spied on parent. Parent spied on child. Employer spied on employee. Teacher on student. Student on teacher. Everyone was encouraged to report on each other. It's a massive spy state. In that particular movie, 1983, a Stasi officer had doubts about a playwright being loyal to the Communist Party and was approved to spy on the man and his lover, and became absorbed into the intricacies of their lives. It was a massive police state. What's so interesting is these guys on the left, they talk about Donald Trump and the Gestapo and the Stasi and the East Germans and the Nazis and all that, except these are the ones who've set up tip lines for you to report on your neighbor. Remember, in the Obama administration, it goes back to the Obama administration literally set up tip lines where if your neighbor was lying about Obamacare, you could report them. You could forward the emails and the chain letters and things that you were getting that lied about Obamacare. You could report your neighbors. Barack Obama encouraged people to confront their neighbors, to get in their faces and argue with them. The Democrats are the totalitarians they warned us about. They want teachers to keep secrets from parents as they indoctrinate their children. They want children to report parents. They want neighbor to report neighbor. And they're furious that Donald Trump has played their game. You know, one of the things that Donald Trump has done is he has encouraged federal government employees to rat out other employees who were complicit in DEI projects and now aren't admitting it. He wants employee to turn on an employee. This is exactly what Democrats have been encouraging people to do for a long time, and now they're outraged that Donald Trump's doing it. Oh, it's just like these Germans. Well, then why did you do it, fool? Why did you do it? They just don't like Donald Trump deploying their tactics against them. That's the problem here. You know, I was in a meeting the other day, and I was talking about the Lord of the Rings. That you got a lot of people whipped up into the MAGA now and national conservatism and stuff. And when you talk to them about Lord of the Rings, and if you throw the ring in the volcano and melt the damn ring, nobody's going to be able to abuse the power again. And we get out of the tit for tat. Well, I'm going to do this to you. So, okay, now you're going to do this to me. So, okay, now I'm going to do this to you. And it's a tit for tat and tit for tat. And it ratchets up and ratchets up. It gets worse and worse and worse and worse until somebody throws the ring away, throws it in the volcano, melts, destroys the ring of power, and nobody can do stuff to the other side. The moment we as a people, particularly those of us who are supportive of Donald Trump, say, we've got to gut Washington, D.C. We've got to get the power out of Washington, D.C. We've got to destroy the ring of power so that nobody can weaponize government against us. The moment we do that, we'll all be better off. And the Democrats will be furious because remember, it's not that the Democrats don't want Donald Trump there. It's that they don't want him using their power. They think it's their power to use against us, and they hate the idea that Donald Trump might use it against them. If you just eliminate the power from Washington, we're all better off. And the only people who will complain are the Democrats. Democrats don't care about totalitarians. They just don't want Donald Trump to be one. They want it. Remember, the Democrats are upset, claiming Donald Trump's going to weaponize the Justice Department. The Biden Justice Department, for the first time, prosecuted a group of pro-life activists for praying outside an abortion clinic. And you know, the Biden administration official who did it, the then head of the Civil Rights Division, lied to the Senate to get confirmed. She was asked, had she ever been charged with any crimes, and she lied. She'd actually been charged with assaulting her husband. Her ex-husband cut his finger down to the bone with a knife and lied about it and got confirmed. In fact, a reporter from a major network the other day emailed me because I wrote about it. He's like, I never heard this story. It's like, exactly, because you guys weren't paying attention. You don't treat conservative concerns the same way. The bias. They don't like it. You know, I got to tell you, that when you hear Democrats upset that Meta and Facebook, that Twitter, they're not going to control disinformation, they're not going to control misinformation, it sounds like what they're saying is they do want censorship. They don't want to be censored. They want to censor other people. And they're not upset that censorship is going away. They're just upset that they won't get to censor. It does kind of sound like, you know, if you talk about privilege like the Democrats like to do, that they've lived a very privileged existence. And now they don't want to get treated like everybody else. In multiple states, progressives have set up tip lines where you can report your neighbor for bias. In the state of Oregon, they've been overwhelmed with complaints of Jews flying Israeli flags as a sign of bias. In New York City this weekend, Miriam's, a highly regarded Jewish restaurant, was vandalized by anti-Semites. Chuck Schumer, God bless him. You know, I'm not a Chuck Schumer fan, but I sure appreciated him showing up at that restaurant to shop and eat this weekend. They are the totalitarians they've warned us about. And their complaints about the right are just that we would dare use the power against them. And this is very important, y'all. I know some of you want revenge. You want payback. But all we do is perpetuate a cycle of violence against each other in this country. And if you want the ultimate payback, in my mind, the ultimate payback is get rid of the power. Because the Democrats want the power. How it manifests itself, oftentimes they target us. But if you get rid of the power, they can't do that. They can't do it. You can't do anything to them, but they can't do anything to you. And it seems for the long-term health, safety, and welfare of our country, we should be gutting Washington, D.C. and decreasing its power, because the only thing that's going to stave off the Democrats from using it against you is you decide to impose a dictatorship and you play into their vices and their grievances. And you say, you know what, Donald Trump, you've got to stay there forever. And he's not going to stay there forever. Populist movements live and die by the charisma of single individuals. Donald Trump is a term-limited man who will be headed into his 80s. He won't be there forever. But the power will be unless we take it away from the Democrats. And right now seems like a perfect time to take their power away so that they cannot get back into power and use it against us. We're not going to have the Supreme Court protecting us forever. So gutting Washington not only saves us money and solves the budgetary problems, it also protects us from the power-hungry, mean bureaucrats who are on the other side. The perfect time to do it is right now.
Honest.
Putting your trust in me to tell you what's going on.
Transparent.
I need you to know this from the bottom of my heart.
Giving you the information without the noise.
My job is to tell you what you want to hear. It's to tell you the truth.
It's the Erick Erickson Show.
Welcome back. It's Erick Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425. Michael, I'm going to go to you. First caller today. Welcome to the show. How are you? Thank you. Oh, okay. So this is a great question, and I'm gonna upset some people, Michael. Here's part of the problem, and it's Donald Trump is going to be there for 4 years. So let me put this in perspective for you. When an oil company decides to invest in new production, it takes about 10 years to generate return on investment. So Donald Trump's only going to be there for 4 years. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 4 years. My suspicion is, unless Congress itself can pass some laws, and it's not just executive orders that can be undone by the next administration, we're not going to see a massive spike in energy except with existing production. And there's only so much we can get out of existing production. Now, I will tell you that if we remember that oil prices are priced on a futures market, and when Donald Trump, on his first and second day in office, began to sign those energy executive orders, the futures market went down on a price of a barrel of oil. So we're going to see in the next couple of months, we're going to see prices going down at the pump because of it. But it can only go down so far. Yeah, it is. It's the futures market. And even the futures understand that if it takes 10 years to get a real return on investment, and Donald Trump's not going to be there in 10 years, we don't know who is. He's not going to be there for 8 years either. It's a real problem for energy companies when Joe Biden himself essentially declared we got to shut down the oil companies by 2030. Now, here's the other thing, though, you got to keep in mind is one of the executive orders Donald Trump got rid of was the EV mandate to force people into electric vehicles by 2030. By that going away shows there's still going to be a market for fossil fuels. And so they are going to have some incentive to invest in existing infrastructure. Now, I will tell you, concurrent to that, I've got a natural gas pipeline that runs behind my house. And we got notified the other day by Kinder Morgan that the federal government has approved the expansion of that pipeline to double its capacity. And they just wanted us to know they'll be working in the easement behind our house. So we've already got a new pipeline construction for more natural gas. Exxon has already said it intends to boost refinery capacity to get more oil out of the ground. So we're going to start seeing some meaningful reductions in energy. And to the point you and I are talking about, you lower energy costs, that lowers food costs. Why? Because everything you buy at the grocery store factors in the cost of harvest, factors in the cost in the case of meat butchering, travel to the butcher, travel to the slaughterhouse, the cost of packaging, the plastics involved, fossil fuels. All of those prices begin to go down if energy prices go down. It's one of the biggest drivers of the increase in grocery prices. One of the biggest drivers of the increase in meat costs is energy. All that is factored in: the cost of the combine, the cost of the harvester, the cost of the tractor trailer to the slaughterhouse, the cost of energy at the slaughterhouse, the cost of sending the meat from the slaughterhouse. All of that sort of stuff is factored into what you buy at the grocery store. Lower the cost of gas, all those costs go down. It really, really does matter greatly long-term for that stuff. Now, speaking of all that, we've got all the turmoil in the markets and stuff. Swiss America's been warning about this and the secret war on cash. They would love for you to get your hands on their free report about the secret war on cash. They have been the trusted leader in precious metals for 40 years. They've been warning people about this war on cash. They're rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau, and they can educate you on protecting your assets. All you have to do to get this free report, by the way, it takes less than 15 minutes to read. Easy to digest. What you do is you call or text 800-289-2646. The all-out war on cash includes digital forms of currency. The government is finding ways to track your crypto purchases. Even though you don't think they can, they're figuring it out. They do not like the anonymity that cash and crypto give you, even if you like it. You need to read this report about the secret war on cash. All you do is mention my name, Erick, E-R-I-C-K. You can call or text 800-289-2646. The report is completely free. 800 289-2646. If you call them, mention my name, Erick Erickson, or just text Erick, E-R-I-C-K, to 800-289-2646. Swiss America will get you their report, Secret War on Cash, completely free. Message and data rates may apply. 800-289-2646. My fellow Americans, I'm delighted to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Brian, I'd like to take your phone call. Thanks for being patient. Brian, how are you? Brian, you there? Great. That's a great question. I cannot, I used to know the number and it's been so long. I cannot remember now the how much money would be generated by national sales tax. I will say, however, that there are some questions about a national sales tax. Is it constitutional as implemented? And the reason I say that is we all pay a sales tax, but if you pay attention, you're paying a sales tax to your state government. The federal government doesn't collect sales taxes. The excise tax on fuel is a very specific tax at the gas pump that the federal government taxes that is constitutional. I don't think there would be a constitutional issue to a national sales tax. Some people have raised it though, because remember the Constitution had to be amended to even do a income tax. It would not be comparable though. We would have to have a pretty significant sales tax to equal what we're generating in the income tax. And the problem is that would be inflationary. It would raise the cost of goods and services. This is why a VAT has largely been opposed by Republicans in this country. Because, so for example, Brian, if you go to Europe today, let me back up. If you go to your local Chick-fil-A today, and you buy you buy a chicken nuggets, you buy a combo, get the 8-piece chicken nuggets and waffle fries and a Coke, because we drink Coca-Cola here because that's what God drinks. God does not drink pop or soda. And you get it, it's whatever it is, $8 something. Well, the actual bill is more than that. This always confuses European tourists. So I remember this. So I actually remember the perfect example. I have the perfect example. When I was a kid, would go home to rural Louisiana during the summer from Dubai and would walk up the street to the Junior Food Mart in my hometown of Jackson, Louisiana. And they had a Coke Icy machine, and I loved Coke Ices. And I would have my $1.25. And I went to get my Coke Icy. It was $1.25, and I gave the girl $1.25, and she said, "Well, you owe me 3 cents." How? The price was $1.20. Well, the sales tax. The sales tax is not included in the price on the board. You go to Europe, they have a value-added tax. So if it says the Coke Icy is $1.25 in Europe, or I'm sorry, €1, well, it's €1 because there's a tax that is paid the entire way through by the people who make the goods. So when Coca-Cola is manufactured, Coca-Cola pays a tax and on the value of the good. And then the shipper pays a tax on the value of the good. And then the grocery store pays a tax on the value of the good. And that's all baked into the ultimate tax that you pay. So you don't pay it up front, but it's been paid the whole long way back. And the reason Republicans have always opposed to that tax is because it makes you powerless to control taxes because you never feel it. The price is the price that you pay. You don't see the line on the tax. You don't see it. With a sales tax, you do. With a property tax, you do. With a VAT, you don't, which is why Republicans oppose a VAT. And they should, because then it becomes very easy for Congress to just raise a VAT. And you never really you feel it in the higher prices, but you don't see it. You don't appreciate why are things getting more expensive. The problem for us as a nation is we are addicted to spending. And in our addiction to spending, we have an income tax, we have a corporate tax, and we have an estate tax. The estate tax generates very little revenue to Washington, D.C. It just keeps billionaires from making their liberal rich kids further billionaires. The corporate tax is paid by us. in terms of higher costs for goods and services. We should get rid of it. But the income taxes, we don't have a revenue system in place to be able to get rid of it. You can say a fair tax, you can say a flat tax. I like a flat tax actually better than a fair tax. It doesn't really matter. You're not going to get rid of the income tax amendment. So you impose a fair tax, all Congress has to do is flip hands to the Democrats, and you're going to get an income tax back because you can't repeal the income tax amendment because it takes 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate, 3/4 of the states, and there's not the will to do it. It becomes a problem. Now there's another problem. And I have to give great thanks to my friend Mike Pence because he's willing to put some money behind this. I remain embarrassed and ashamed of the national pro-life movement, with the exception of Susan B. Anthony. Susan B. Anthony and Marjorie Dansfeller are the only pro-life group in America willing to stand up against Robert F. Kennedy Jr. There was a story I saw in the New York Times today that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has a secret fan club of homeschool Christian parents. These people have no idea who this man is. They know he's against vaccines and they think their kids got autism from vaccines. And they know he's against seed oil and eating and wants people to eat healthy, and they do too. And so they're all about him. They have no idea who the man is. That's the most disturbing thing, that horrible human beings like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can develop this cult following among homeschool Christian moms who simply don't have the time to pay attention because they're busy homeschooling their kids. Do they even know that his infidelity was so great that it caused his wife to commit suicide? Do they know that he drove his wife to commit suicide? He literally did drive his wife to commit suicide. She found the diary, the documented evidence he kept of all the women he slept with behind his wife's back. It drove her to commit suicide, and they were getting a divorce when she found this out, all the infidelity. She filed for divorce, or he filed for divorce against her. And in the process of going through this messy divorce, when she discovers the extent of his infidelity, she hanged herself. And even though they were divorcing and clearly the marriage was over, he refused to give her body to her family. He buried her in the family plot. And after the funeral was over, dug up her body and moved it somewhere else. That's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been funded by donors to the abortion industry. In fact, one of Robert Kennedy Jr.'s major donors is a man named Fred Standback. Fred Standback has given over $7 million in the last decade to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and other left-wing causes. You know who else Fred Standback supports? This is wild to me. Fred Standback Jr. supports abortion access with Planned Parenthood and left-leaning environmental causes like the Sierra Club, and is a huge advocate of population control. In fact, according to the 2018 Knoxville News report, he is a known proponent of anti-humanist environmentalism, the belief that protecting the environment hinges on population control. And this is a man who has long funded Robert Kennedy Jr. You people think that the pharmaceutical industry is spreading its money around Washington, D.C., and that's how it controls them. This man spread his money across Robert F. Kennedy's portfolio of nonprofit activism groups. You think he's not going to have a say in policies with the Secretary of Health and Human Services? But Mr. Erickson, he won't be overseeing that station. No. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will oversee medications related to abortion as Secretary of Health and Human Services. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will oversee gun violence studies within the CDC because he's the Secretary of Health and Human Services. By the way, he calls the NRA a terrorist organization. And then there's Donald Trump's own words. This is Donald Trump, President of the United States, about RFK.
RFK Jr. is a Democrat plant, a radical left liberal. A lot of people think that Junior is a conservative. He's not. He's more liberal than anybody running on the Democrat side. Junior is totally anti-gun, an extreme environmentalist who makes the green news scammers look very conservative by comparison. And he's anti-military and he's anti-vet. He's an extreme liberal. He's radical left. And so don't think you're going to vote for him and feel good. He's a radical left Democrat. I'd even take Biden over Junior because our country would last about a year or two longer than it would with Junior. It would collapse almost immediately.
That's Donald Trump on Robert Kennedy. Here's the thing. Donald Trump skillfully got Robert Kennedy to get out of the race and endorse him and promised him he'd nominate him for Secretary of Health and Human Services. Didn't say he'd fight for him. On Friday, J.D. Vance seemed to slightly indicate it was okay for the Senate to reject Robert Kennedy Jr. He said, if you can't be trusted on life, you can't be trusted on anything. And then the clip surfaced of Robert Kennedy Jr. saying that he believed that abortion up until birth, without federal or state regulations, was acceptable. In fact, he said abortion shouldn't even be a state level issue. It should be between a woman and her doctor up until the woman gives birth. He's a progressive. Just because you think he's good on seed oils or just because you think he's good on vaccines does not mean that's all he'll do. As Secretary of Health and Human Services, he will be in charge of the largest share of the federal budget and also in the line of presidential succession. And this is a man who has funded left-wing causes for decades. This is a man who supports abortion until birth. This is a man who supports abortion medications. This is a man who believes, literally said within months of 9/11, that American farmers were a bigger threat to our democracy than Al-Qaeda. This is a man who used nonprofits to go after farmers. This is a man who is bad on everything. Just because you like him on season. I had somebody come after me today and said, Erickson, I love you, but you're wrong on this. We need him there. No, you do not need a progressive Kennedy Democrat in charge of the Department of Health and Human Services. You can certainly find other people. And it's a damning indictment, honestly, on these people on the right who support him, that they lack the imagination to find better people who actually share their values as a whole, instead of putting some far left progressive in charge. The man's received millions of dollars over the course of a decade from someone who believes that to save the environment, you must cull the human population. You can't separate Robert Kennedy from his whole history. And the bottom line, the most important line is this. You are supporting a man who drove his wife to commit suicide. That, more than anything else, speaks about Robert Kennedy's character. He drove his wife to commit suicide, refused to allow her family to get her body, and then after the showy funeral for the woman who was on the verge of divorcing him, dug up her body and moved it elsewhere. There's something wrong with you if you want someone like that in the presidential line of succession. You cannot keep dismissing character. Character still counts. And his character and his causes for the entirety of his public life are too far out there on the left for any of us to want him anywhere near the presidency. We got to move on. Just what a gross human being. And if you're a longtime listener to this program, you know I so rarely say that about anyone, but I can certainly say that about Robert Kennedy Jr. and never have to apologize, because he actually is a horrible, horrible human being. Now let me move on. Before I get out of here, I got to tell you about Vision Computer. As bad as he is, they're fantastic. My gosh. They can build you a computer and bring it up to speed with the latest graphics processing unit, so you can stay up to date with AI and graphics power. You can get a great CPU, the RAM, the ROM, everything is so great, and they'll work with you. So listen, if you were to think of the big box electronics store, I'm not going to say their name, or go to one of those websites where you can build PCs, and it's so convoluted, there are so many options, you have no idea. You call Vision Computer, you're going to get an actual human being on the phone, from the United States, no less. And you're going to be able to explain to them what you want, what you need. And they're going to be able to build you a computer that matches that. And it's going to last you. It's going to be upgradable over time. And you're going to get their 5-star customer service. So if you ever have a question, you'll call them and they'll answer the phone within 15 seconds and give you the answer. They can even remote in if you need to. You're not going to get that world-class service from anybody else out there. Vision Computers, you call them at 404 Compute, tell them I sent you, you're going to save even more money. 404 Compute or visioncomputers.com. You will not regret it. You need a new PC, they're who you need to do business with.
You're at the intersection of politics, news, culture, and current events. It's the Erick Erickson Show.
Listener Chris from Virginia emailed me and says, if Kennedy is only with us 60%, he's failing us. Kennedy's not even with us 60%. He's not with us 30% of the time. Kennedy's only with you people who support him on two things: questioning vaccines and seed oils. That's it. He is bad on environmental issues. He's bad on abortion issues. He's bad on gun issues. He's bad on regulatory issues. And by the way, he stands to profit as a trial lawyer from a lot of cases and decisions that are brought by Secretary of Health and Human Services. He's wrong constantly, bad constantly, just a terrible pick. There's a video that's gone viral of a Jesuit priest who says, Jesus was once a refugee, so were Mary and Joseph, and we have to be compassionate to immigrants. And a lot of Protestants are replying back to him, they were not refugees. They just moved from one province of the Roman Empire to another. Actually, Pope Pius XII from the Catholic tradition referred to Jesus, Mary, and Joseph as the archetype of every refugee family. And in fact, in most Christian faith traditions, up until we started arguing about illegal immigration, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph were treated as refugees from Judea who were being persecuted there and had to flee to Egypt. This is important for you to understand, most Catholic, and all Catholic, but most Protestant traditions treated Jesus, Mary, and Joseph as refugees until this country started arguing about illegal immigration. The reality, though, is that while they were fleeing to Egypt, seeking refuge away from Herod, they were within the Roman Empire. They weren't crossing over to the Parthian Empire, the Persian Empire, any other empire. They were still within the bounds of Rome. They weren't illegally inside another country's territory. And even if they were not drug dealers. They were not murderers. They were not rapists. They were not gangbangers. There's a real difference there. It is profound to me that the left cannot distinguish what Donald Trump is doing. It reminds me of John Harwood, who I saw this tweet the other day, and I thought it was fake. I thought it was Photoshopped. It appears to be real from 2017, 2018, that as awful as the MS-13 gang is, they're still human beings and should be treated as humans. Just like people on the left cannot distinguish between the peaceful and the violent. We can argue all we want over whether or not they're refugees or not, Jesus and his family. Whether they were or not is irrelevant. They were peaceful people. They weren't the class of people Donald Trump is deporting, and that the left cannot be honest about. That is a damning indictment on the character and truthfulness of people on the left right now. All right, take care.